Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Dave Allen has returned to the winner's circle with a victory over Dorian Darch, stopping the Welshman in the third round of their fight on the Kelbrook undercard in Sheffield. Now, this was a bit of a strange fight to say the least, because it really was a case of Allen went through the levels. First round, it felt like it was some light sparring session and that Allen really wasn't doing too much to his opponent and not really trying to damage him. He was moving around, throwing feints, utilizing head movements, slipping punches, showboating. He was really sort of turning it on for the crowd, trying to show his versatility and skill in the ring. But his punches, the ones that he was throwing and landing against Darch, they looked like they had about 30% of his power on it. He was just touching him. There was no real mean intent. He just seemed to be easing into the fight. It looked like he didn't want to hurt Darch. And I know that there have been some people who didn't think that this would actually end in a stoppage, that this would go the distance, because Dorian Darch has a fight lined up with one of Dave Allen's friends, a guy that he's helping manage. But the second round, very similar. But this was the point where Darch was sort of warming into the fight himself. He thought, well, if Dave Allen's not going to come after me, I'll go after him a little bit more. And he did have success, and arguably the round very close, and he could have won it. But it was the third round, after receiving a rocket in the corner, where Dave Allen really turned up the heat from the get-go. He came out looking to land hard punches to get Darch out of there. His cornerman had really said, look, this is not good enough, you need to turn it up. And in the first minute, he had the win. He had Darch down twice. The first knockdown, it came about from a series of left hooks to the body and head. It was just a real flurry of good punches. And the second knockdown, effectively a continuation of the first, but he did slip in a good right or two in that final sequence. Darch on the ground sort of shook his head, didn't want to get up. And given he does have a fight lined up for another month or so, this is against one of Dave Allen's mates, then I could sort of understand why he stayed down. I mean, he was the opponent. This was a tune-up for Dave Allen. He was never expected to trouble him. But it was a little bit sort of strange, that first round in particular. It looked like it was just sort of a warm-up of sorts, and Dave Allen didn't put the hammer down, didn't put anything on his punches. Yeah, but after the fight, he said that he came back because he loves the game, that he doesn't really have anything but boxing, and he can't leave just yet. And given most of us know the sort of circumstances with Allen, how he does sort of battle with his mental health, he's obviously had some physical ailments which he hasn't fully disclosed, and he took a battering in that David Price fight. Some of those sorts of comments, it does sort of concern me, but the British Boxing Board of Control, made him go through a battery of tests, scans and all sorts, and he did pass. So he wants to continue to box, so who am I to say that he shouldn't? But I am still concerned about his health and welfare going forward, and we'll come to that in a moment. But he said that he needed to give a massive thanks to the British Boxing Board of Control. He said they've been most stringent with him and have assured his safety is paramount. And then he went on to thank Eddie Hearn and Matchroom that they are behind him 100%. And the what next for Dave Allen, it seems to be that they're looking towards working for a British title at some point, a title shot, obviously at the moment that's held by Daniel Dubois, but as he moves on to bigger and better things, he's not, he's going to drop the belt eventually, or it may go to Joe Joyce if Joyce beats him, but Joyce, the same thing again, he will drop the belt eventually as well. So at some point, possibly later this year, it could become vacant. And obviously they're not talking about Allen sort of going above British level at the moment, and perhaps they're wise to do that in terms of tempering expectation. And obviously if he's battling for a British title, he takes a bit of punishment. We know where his level is, instead of talking about potential fights with Alexander Povetkin, which in hindsight, given the David Price loss, that Povetkin talk just looks so silly now in hindsight. I mean, at the time it looked optimistic, but that Price loss certainly put things in perspective. But a British title, I think maybe he could work towards it, but I still have concerns about his health and safety, because obviously this fight with Dorian Darch, a hand-picked opponent on short notice, being brought in to effectively lose for Dave Allen to get a few rounds under his belt. It's a tune-up and he moves on. Gets a bit of a payday, and this is one of the reasons Allen said he's still here in interviews this week, that he's got houses to pay for. So his motivation is not necessarily the glory. He says this is all he's got, but it's also for the money. But I'm still concerned about Allen going forward when he comes against bigger punches, because we've seen Dave Allen sometimes can freeze on the bigger stage. You can argue he did that against Lenroy Thomas in the first fight. Maybe you could argue there was a little bit of that in the David Price fight. He wasn't able to sort of go to a plan B. And against better and slicker boxers, perhaps he will fall into that same old pattern where he ends up getting sort of peppered with all manner of shots, and that's not going to be good for his long-term health. But yeah, what did you make of it? Dorian Darch stopped in the third round by Dave Allen. Yeah, strange old fight. Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter. Boxing_squared. I'm out.